of a Friend from Creative Pinellas, a new conversation series drawing connections between artists, inspirations, friends, and mentors, and showcasing the individuals that together make a creative community.
This program is brought to you by Creative Pinellas. Our mission is to facilitate a vibrant, integrative, collaborative, and sustainable Pinellas County arts community and arts and cultural destination. Creative Pinellas is funded in part by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, and the State of Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs.
Tonight's conversation features visual artists Akiko Kotani and Babs Reingold.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this month's Friend of a Friend. Before we get started, we'd like to introduce Creative Pinellas CEO, Barbara St. Clair.
Hello, thank you so much for coming. We are so excited about this program, Friend of a Friend. It was a brainchild of the Creative Pinellas team. We were trying to talk about what we could do that Creative Pinellas could do that was really special, and we are so connected to our arts community. Akiko Kotani and Babs Reingold are both grantees with Creative Pinellas Professional Grant. Akiko was our artist laureate last year, and when we came to her and said, would you be the first person on this program, which she was last month, she said yes. And she said, and I know who I can invite for the next Friend of a Friend. And so this is kind of viral in a really excellent and exciting way. And I know you'll enjoy yourself this evening. So I'm going to turn it back over to Danny and Babs and Akiko, and I'm going to tune in on Facebook. See you soon.
Thank you, Barbara. So excited to have our second episode of Friend of a Friend. If you're new to the show, we're pretty excited about the actual structure of the show. Essentially, it's one creative person interviewing another, but this month's guest will always be next month's host, and they will get to select who their guest will be, whether it's a friend, a mentor, an inspiration, student, somebody that they select to choose. So last month's episode, if you tuned in, I was able to host that and was able to speak with artist Akiko Kotani. And so, of course, this month's host is Akiko, and she is selected as her guest, Babs Reingold. So if you'd like to find out who next month's guest is, who Babs decides to speak with next month, stick around to the end of the episode and she'll be announcing it then. So before we hand it over to Akiko, I just want to introduce Akiko briefly. Akiko Kotani was born in Hawaii. She received her BFA in painting from the University of Hawaii and her MFA in textiles from the Tyler School of Art in Pennsylvania. She now lives here in Gulfport, Florida, but she spent years as a professor both at Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania and in Koç University in Istanbul, Turkey. And her work is a permanent collection of several private and public collections, both in museums such as the Cleveland Museum of Art and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And we're glad to have her here living and working with us in Pinellas County. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you, Akiko, to go ahead and begin with our second episode of Friend of a Friend.
Thank you, Danny. And I'd like to thank also Barbara St. Clair for her ongoing work with Creative Pinellas. She does a fantastic job, and we have lots to thank her for. And my special guest, of course, is my friend, Babs Reingold, and she is right in front of her work, which is great. We're going to talk about that particular work. Babs is Argentinian born. She's an American artist, and she grew up in the Cleveland area. Now, Babs, if I have anything of this wrong, you please correct me. And she started an extensive art career in the New York City area. And we are so lucky to have her here in the St. Petersburg, Florida area. She lives here now permanently, but she also travels back to New York City to do some of her exhibition work there. Now, she concentrates on sculptures, drawings, and installations, and her work focuses on the environment, poverty, and beauty. Very interesting and intriguing areas of work that we will be able to talk about this evening, I hope. We don't have very much time, but we'll touch on some of them. And the format for this evening will consist of, we're going to concentrate on 3 of her works. The one that you see right behind her is called Hair Nest. And we're going to look at that very carefully. And I would very much like to look at Luna Window, also Double Vessel, which is, we're going to end with Double Vessel, which is currently on exhibition at the Tampa International Airport. So all of you can go and see her work there. Now, Danny, if you could please bring up slides 1 to 9 and scroll through Hair Nest, I would very much like to talk about this work with Babs.
Can I interrupt one thing?
I'm not through yet, dear.
Okay.
I first saw this work. This is called Hair Nest, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, fine.
This is a detail right now.
Fine. That's fine. He's going to scroll through the work. All right. Now, I first saw this work at your studio and followed its subsequent development. If you will let me give you my impressions, I entered an environment that was completely of your world. Hair Nest was larger than life size, all against the wall, done in graphite and other materials and methods and what stood out for me was the painstaking work drawn on a prepared ground. Now, the first question I have for you, Babs, is would you explain the process of this prepared ground upon which you draw, inscribe, and so on and so forth?
I would love to answer that. I just want to make one correction to your introduction.
Go ahead.
I was born in Caracas, Venezuela.
Yes.
Not in Argentina.
Oh.
So Argentina would be interesting too, but I wasn't there. And I also, before I get going, I just wanted to say a quick thank you also to the Creative Pinellas team and to Danny for introducing this series, because I'm very excited about it as well. And I also wanted to thank you, Akiko, for inviting me to be a guest. And I'm excited to talk about the work. So you asked, how do I prepare the grounds for these pieces?
Yes, because I found that to be really quite intriguing, that you do a lot of work. I don't know, was it on the canvas or was it on a hard ground?
So these are on panel, okay, because they have to support the branches, obviously. Mm-hmm. And they are, I build the panels and they are first covered with probably about 5 or 6 coats of gesso, mm-hmm, with sanding. And right, then I use modeling paste to make the next ground. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of coats of modeling paste that go on the panel. Right. And I sand them down to a really fine finish. And I'm trying to create almost like a fresco quality.
That's the feeling one has when you look at the surface. It is there's some depth to the surface.
It's almost, I mean, it's impossible obviously to see in photos and sitting here virtually, but they're really, they're velvety, and they're just exquisite drawing grounds. And I love to draw. So
In the process of your application of drawing, it must be a pleasure to execute it, to put your pencil or whatever you're putting on to the surface, because it is not like canvas, it isn't a board, but there's some chalky depth to it, right?
there is, but there's, I try to have as little texture in a way as possible, so it's just so smooth. It's just a delight to draw on.
Yes, I love
even more than hot press paper, because I love hot press paper. But it's interesting because I've used this process for a long time, but I had not done it like this. I've put dry pigment on, I've used oils on this process, and I've experimented with how much I sand it. So it comes from a history of using modeling paste going back to I began in the early 2000s experimenting with it as one of my mediums that I use.
Right. Now, before you go on more about this technical, details, what I would like you to talk about are the other three-dimensional objects that are part of this assemblage or this tableau. I don't know, what do you call it? This tableau?
Well, I just think of these things as sculpture, even though there's drawing in it involved, because there's all kinds of three-dimensional medium that's used. There's things on the ground in front of it. I'm interested in all kinds of mediums and creating hard and soft, and the combination of different mediums is interesting to me. The latest piece, for example, used cast glass. The branches are cast in glass, and then
Danny, can you show us close up of the glass?
That's images 1 through 2 through in 2 there's one that shows the cast glass, and 3 details 2 and 3.
There we go.
There you can see them, and they have a very light sandblast, so it's almost like a frosted, and they are lead crystal. And this one is laying on a bed of fire glass, and then you can see there's the hair nest. This one is hair nest 01, and the titles come from the year that I lost my hair. So this is a year's worth of hair loss turned into a nest. So each one of this body of work, the plan is to have a decade of hair loss. Now, I don't plan on having it successive years. I just wanted to represent 10 years.
Right.
So right now the plan is to have 10 of these in total by the time I'm done.
Now,
and
can you tell me, the way that I am reading the glass branches, they look flat, but they're three-dimensional, aren't they?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I saw, I think 1 or 2, and I was, there. Now we can see it much there. Much,
Yes. Yes. And it's I was challenged by inventing ways to attach the branch to the panel, which I found interesting too. And so there's a structure that's behind
how did you
the
do
panel so that I can attach it. Anyway, this is hair nest 01, and so that's the hair loss from 2001. And the other 2, like there's hair nest 16, that's from hair loss 2016, and then hair nest 15 is from 2015. So the mediums for me became also about ideas of fragility, and how beauty is fleeting, and the environment is fleeting, that that things don't last. And that was one of the reasons I came up with the idea for the glass, as well as the Hairnest 16. That's made out of silk organza, the branch. That's not, those are images 6 and 7. And though that's what the one that's sitting directly behind me. And this is stained silk organza, which is my method that I used for creating the Luna window objects and the last tree objects. And it's the one that I use to stuff the hair to make the sculptural objects. But in this case, there's no hair in it. This is all made with sculpting wire mesh that I can bend and manipulate, although the largest one was made with just simple hardware wire. The smaller ones are made with this sculptural wire mesh that you can bend and form. And then I stitch the silk organza around the wire mesh. And it's typical of all of my pieces where there's a lot of detail. I mean, this is hours and hours of stitching and sewing. So those are all little tiny knots. And
now, may I ask another question, perhaps
yes,
a bit more, conceptual? Now, this tree has no leaves, yet has other objects, such as we were talking about, glass branches, black pebbles on the floor, and seemingly anthropomorphic figures depicted in your drawing. Now, I can see figurative drawings and a focal point of, the nest of hair. The question is part of this work an abstract representation of a figure?
Trees have always been anthropomorphic for me. I love trees. I see them as figures. And in fact, the last one to me really felt that way. The Hairnest 01, which is the first slide. That one for me somehow really became like it was a person. And I can remember as far back as a teenager, when some of the first drawings that I was doing when we were living in the projects, there was one lone tree. And I remember looking out the window, drawing this one lone tree and just thinking about this anthropomorphic figure. And then trees have come in and out of my work on an ongoing basis. And it's very strange to suddenly realize I've returned to the trees. I mean, I didn't start out always with the trees, except when I was very young. And then suddenly I was doing monotypes with trees in them. And that was in the late 80s and early 90s. And then I left trees for a while and then they came back. And they're fascinating from all of the things that they contribute to the environment and to life. And they're also fascinating because they have this whole underground system that's not visible. I had an interesting story told to me by a dealer who showed Joseph Boy's work, and he was talking about his one tree died and the other tree, the exact same tree, was across the way from it. And he was so worried that this tree was dying. Actually, the tree hadn't completely died. And Joseph Boy says, don't worry. The roots of the other tree will bring that tree back to life. And sure enough, it came back to life.
Wow, that's really amazing. All right, now I would like to go on to Luna Window. So it would be slide 17 to 20, Danny. And now this work, I believe, was shown. I saw this work at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg.
Yes.
It was the 2018 Skyway exhibition.
The 2017 Skyway, yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, frankly, when I first saw this installation, it struck me as a room without air, without hope, without any way to get out. The window was too high to even look out from, much less let light in. I have come to understand that this is what you call your poverty series, in quotes. Now, before I ask my question to you, I must also say that this intriguing work held my attention with its simplicity, and it was so straightforward. It was a straightforward force for me. There was a magnet of, once again, a deep source of energy beneath the work. This time, though, it was crying to be let out. Now, perhaps you can elucidate for me what I am trying to say, or even not say. Maybe I got everything wrong.
Well, no, you got a lot of it right. In fact, the point of it was to have this idea that there's no escape.
Yeah, that's why I got that.
You got that. You got that. I mean, the ladders lead to these tiny windows. You can't climb the ladders because they're soft and they're malleable. They're non-functional ladders, but the ladder itself as a symbol is supposed to, it symbolizes hope. It symbolizes for climbing up. It symbolizes for a way to get out. And I took that, and I guess you could say I kind of subverted the ladder, and you can't use it for anything. So this work being about poverty began for me when I witnessed Katrina in 2005. And this is what led to this body of work, and then also the work on the environment. The following year, I listened to Jared Diamond talk about how we are destroying ourselves and we don't realize we're destroying ourselves. But the Katrina particularly hit me because I was witnessing this devastation, and here we were, a first world country, and we could not help these people. And in fact, it looked like a third world country to me. Mm-hmm. And poverty it touched a personal note. And frankly, I escaped the projects and did not want to really look back at that work. And suddenly I just realized I had to make work about this. And so I started first with these hung out. The first things were when you use the phrase hung out to dry, you leave people hung out to dry. But then I took it literally to do these clotheslines. And then the Luna window grew out of that. And the name Luna window came from the fact that the projects that I lived in Cleveland were built on what was an amusement park called Luna Park. Mm. And that's where I got Luna window. I mean, most people think, oh, it's because it's a reference to the moon, but it's a reference to this amusement park. And I thought, how ironical to have like this poverty-stricken projects built on what was once a place where people had a lot of fun and the well-to-do could go and enjoy an amusement park. Mm-hmm. So, and the animals are always present, but they didn't start to come into my work until a little later, because I felt that the way we treat animals is an indication of how we treat every person, every living creature, every being. And I remember distinctly a lecture I went to. The artist Sue Coe she did these drawings of pigs in these horrid conditions in the factories. And someone in the audience said, "Why do you care about pigs? That it's like, and besides, I like my pork was the question. And I'm sure she's been asked that question many times. And she said, when you can care for the lowest being or creature or species on the totem pole, you will care for everything up above. And so that's why animals had to come in.
So this is a representation of that idea.
Yes, yes. And your idea of no escape is right on. And it's I want to make people, through my art, I always try to make people aware of issues, but I'm not trying to do it as, it is social, it is a statement, but you're not supposed to get the statement literally right away. You're supposed to feel it. I want an emotional, visceral response to the work.
It is visceral. It's very raw. I mean, looking at this animal, it's raw, it's visceral. And really, I was so struck with the work that there was no air, there was no life. Everything was sucked out of it. But what you depicted is the kind of pain that people go through when they are poor. It's just, it cannot. I think that you very, very successfully did that here, but in an artistic way. In other words, you did it in a way that there is objectivity about it. Now, this is very difficult for an artist to do, to be apart from the pain and the suffering and to just simply, bring the works out. And that's what I really love this work, because it shows so much, but it's very objective. Do you find that that's a kind of thing that you've come to understand as well about your work?
It's kind of, your take is interesting and different. Most people are not thinking about the objectivity, they're thinking about their emotional, visceral response. And that's
there. Yes.
What I'm trying to get at them, to make them react. I mean, for example, the last tree installation, the big installation, that piece, and that's slide 14, if you want to put it up. That big installation actually it was fascinating. I had a couple of different people, and this one woman particularly touched me, where she decided that she had such a response to it that she had trees planted in my name in Florida. I mean, and she sent me the certificates because she was touched by this idea of the environment and climate change. So she was moved without having a statement there or preaching to her about this is what she should do. She took it upon herself to do this. And that's the hope.
Where was this, in Florida?
Well, this was the installation that was, at first it was in New York.
This woman had the tree.
Oh, that she lives in North Carolina, but she bought the tree. She got these trees for me in, the panhandle part of Florida. They had some environmental place where they were planting the trees, and she sent me the certificates and said, now these trees are planted in your name as part of an environmental. I mean, it was actually fascinating that she was moved to do this. So it's interesting what comes out of.
Was it a result of seeing your work?
Yeah.
The last.
Yeah. She saw that this installation
maybe Danny can bring up what number?
14, slide 14 is the last tree. And she saw it first in.
There we go.
New York. There it is in Soho.
Right.
And then this is the second showing that it had 3 years later at the Birchfield Penny in Buffalo, New York. And in fact, the second showing this one was really a fantastic space, because I could have the video of the video higher up where I really wanted it. In Soho, the space was not as grand.
This work,
and the video has it's a slow chopping of a tree, and it's this kind of methodical noise. You hear this chopping of a lone tree, and then there's also a chainsaw afterward. We can't get the tree chopped down, so we're taking a chainsaw to it. And then there's a little splice in of Jared Diamond talking at his lecture, where he talks about Easter Island and how Easter Island is earth writ small.
I'd like to say that even this work is, the trees are dead. I mean, this is really the last tree. Now, maybe you could tell us something about the environmental part of your work.
Well, as I had started to say earlier, was that in 2006, I went to this lecture by Jared Diamond, and he was talking about collapse.
I'm sorry.
How societies choose to. What?
Who is Jerry Diamond?
Jared Diamond is an anthropologist, and who has written a number of books. And this particular book that he wrote was called Collapse. How societies choose to fail or succeed.
Okay.
And something about listening to him talk about the environment, and
it inspired you to go.
Well, but it followed this Katrina thing, and it was interesting because he was talking about Easter Island and how they had chopped down all the trees. They essentially deforested themselves into poverty. It's a poverty-stricken island, Easter Island. And they thought that the trees would just grow back. And because of the specific conditions of the island, the trees didn't grow back. I mean, not fast enough. So this idea that they were, his one sentence that he said that just stuck in my head, and it took about 2 more years, and then I came up with the title, and that was the first little drawing I made of the last tree installation. But he said, what do you think the islander was thinking when he chopped down the last tree? And that was my question, like, what do you think he was thinking? And it was this sudden feeling that we're in the midst of it, and what are we doing? You know, we're watching climate change just before our eyes, setting records,
system.
And the devastation is coming. I mean, I think today I mentioned that to my husband. I said, I think they recorded 130 degrees in Death Valley, and it was like the highest.
It's
what?
a record.
Yeah, it was a record. Yeah, I know. So I just suddenly realized I just had to make work about this. I mean, prior to that, I had been doing my thing for recycling, being involved. I knew there was an issue of the environment. I mean, they've been talking about the environment since the 60s.
Right.
So there was a big meeting, believe it or not, in the 80s that took place in St. Petersburg at the Don Cesar, where all of these these people that were involved in the government they had a task force, and they were trying to deal with climate change and the environment.
And
so
did you attend, or you heard?
No. This was in the 80s, and I was not a part of this, or I was in grad school and doing a whole other body of work. But the point I'm trying to make is that right, this has been going on for so long, and I just, something about seeing the Katrina devastation. These hurricanes are coming, they're getting worse, everything's getting worse, and then hearing his lecture, and kaboom, I just knew I had to make work about both of these things.
Right. Right. Mhm. And you know, we have about 5 minutes. I mean, before we talk about, you know, your work at the airport, but perhaps you could tell us about beauty. That's also a very interesting, you know, area of your work. And if we can call up some images.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Question of
21,
21.
yeah, question of beauty.
20.
Yeah, so in 1998, I started losing hair, and it turned out I had a thyroid condition. But for some reason, in 2005, I started thinking about hair loss as losing my beauty.
Mhm.
And then later on, it became more about aging. But first, it was really just about losing my beauty. And part of it was that I had always been complimented on my hair, and it was kind of the thing. I thought I had, you know, nice hair, and next thing you know, you're losing a lot of it. And believe me, I had a lot of it to lose. So no
Well,
one, no.
you're putting it into your artwork. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so what happened is that preceding this, a question of beauty here, this piece, the first piece in the series was called Fallout, Beauty Lost and Found. And I decided, instead of just collecting my hair by year and putting it in a jar, which I've been doing since 1998. So how many years is this now? I'm still doing it. So it's 20, 22, 23 years, coming on the 23rd year. So I decided to do daily hair doodles to turn this hair loss into this beautiful little object. Because the curved line.
You have to explain what a hair doodle is. I do, but explain what that is.
Okay, a hair doodle is a thing where I take my hair loss from that day, and if you put on detail number 2, let's see, 22 or 23. I can't remember which one. I don't have the pictures in front of me. That shows you each one of these little daily doodles. So what I do is
you name them.
I take the daily loss, okay, each day, and then I make these little doodles out of them. Okay. And it's, you know how you twist and turn your hair, like when you're sitting there sometimes and you're fiddling with your hair.
Well,
so
I can't, because my hair is so stiff.
That's right. You don't have hair that can do this, Akiko.
Hair doodle.
No, you can't make a doodle out of your hair.
No.
But I have really pretty curly hair. I have curly hair. Right. And so it makes a great little doodle. So the first series of work, the Fallout, Beauty Lost and Found, I decided I would doodle these, but then I would make these beautiful drawings of them. Okay. In fact, one of the hair doodle drawings, these are 4-foot drawings, is a month of drawings, one of them. Now, the detail of what you're looking at, this encompassed a whole year of doodles. But the MFA, in fact, owns one of the Fallout, Beauty Lost and Found pieces. So I decided if I made these beautiful drawings of them, I could immortalize the hair. I could do it also if I literally tacked it on to something. I could turn this thing that we think of when we lose hair, and that it's kind of repulsive and it's ugly, it's in the drain. I wanted to make something beautiful out of it and turn it into and put it into this completely different context. And it also became a bit of it was like a diary, and it was a kind of and the doodles themselves are almost like they looked a little bit like a language, like symbols. So they became, in a weird sort of way, like I was writing the stuff, but they were these little doodles. This one is a question of beauty number 2, and this is a month of hair loss. But the big ones, the number 21 This one was it's a 3-panel piece, and it's a baby picture of me.
Oh, that's
And the baby picture fades over time. I disappear. So it's this idea that, you know, the hair's left, but I've disappeared.
I see. So that's the idea.
And those are stitched on, by the way, to the paper surface. And Danny, put up number 21. That one is this one's 120 inches wide, and they're separate G-clay prints of my baby picture. And the first one's ghosted too, but then it's almost completely faded. But in person, you can actually still see a little bit of my image back there.
Yes.
I'm 2 years old. This is a photo taken by my father. Now, my father was a photographer, and he has some wonderful pictures of us, but that's a whole other long story. He didn't do it for a living, but he used to submit it and exhibit his photographs. Anyway, so this is a baby picture of me, which I then manipulated. And these are a whole year of hair doodles stitched onto paper and then stitched onto canvas.
So this also has the element of nostalgia.
Of what?
Nostalgia. It has time, you know, there's something about time, there's something about nostalgia. Thinking about when you were a kid and your father, and you know, and hair. It's very interesting, you know, kind of a juxtaposition of things again, which I think that your work you know, has a lot of those elements. Very, very good way that you combine all of these disparate things together. It's very good.
Well, I mean, nostalgia is part of it, but also this passage of time and marking time and what it means to mark time, and then memories of time. And so my hope is that it would conjure up all of those things. And the reactions have been very interesting because for some reason people immediately think, oh, did you have cancer? Were you suffering from something? Well, I had a thyroid condition, and yes, so I lost hair, but it wasn't that I'm dying, but of course we're all dying every day. I mean, it's the Buddhist philosophy where, you know, every minute. And
okay,
but
before we go into that, I would like to look at your the piece that you have at the airport. Okay.
Okay.
Double vessel. So we can take a look at that, and if you can tell us something about it, I would, you know, be interested, because I have not really heard you talk about these works. Are these works recent, or are they you've had them for a while and you're showing them now?
This is the first time I'm showing them. They have taken a long journey in a way, because I start and stop on some of this work, and they have definitely changed over time. You can also go to double vessel number 2 and double vessel number 3, that's 25 and 26, Danny, and show those as well. These are the ones that are in the show that Akiko and I are in at the airport. Mm-hmm. So I want to give a shout out real quick too to you know, Jenny Carey for coordinating the space, and then to Kim Raditz for all her hard work to coordinate and put the show together. So they were both involved in this, and it's a beautiful show. And if you get a chance, you should go over there and take a look at it, because you can social distance easily. The first hour is free, and so on, in the parking garage. But this work is
tell me about this.
It started with the skin series, which was about the course of a life and how it gets marked and pocked and scarred. And so that's where the stitching and then mending started. But they've now turned into these vessels, and with this idea that vessels have so many metaphorical meanings, but as containers, and containers to hold all these things like your memories and your issues, and but they're weird containers because they're bags. They're not a typical what you think of as a vessel that you would use for fetching water or
why did you use these bags? And these bags are transparent. They're kind of they wouldn't hold water as a vessel would. So explain what that is all about.
Yeah, I wanted this idea that they were semi-transparent, that you could maybe see through them, but you really can't see what's in them. And some of them not have things inside of them. These particular ones don't have as much inside of them, although double vessel number 1 does. It has this yarn in it. But the first ones had hair in it. It had almost like you carry a bag with these talisman-like objects that you keep. But they were also about the baggage that you carry as you go through life.
Right.
That's how the whole baggage and bag series began. And it's morphed a little bit, but it still continues with that idea that you keep things in a bag, you keep things hidden, and even the idea that eventually the stuff just kind of pops out, whether you want it to or to not.
Because the bags are really like sieves to me, you can try to put something in it, but it will, as you say, kind of, it will just flow out. You have, in other words, you have no control over, keeping these things intact, which is also, this idea of fragility, of no control over, life.
Yeah. Well, the like I say, the original, there's one that's called Baggage Light. That's a sculpture. It's an installation, and I have lights that go off and on. And so there's these things that are hidden in the bags. Mostly they have hair in them, human hair. The human hair has been part of my work since the late 90s. And I wanted this idea that the hair, again, containing the DNA and containing all these secrets, like it's a mass of humanity, because I get this hair from salons. I've had, my God, how many different salons over my course of doing this collect hair for me. So it's coming from all over the place, and it's sitting in these bags, and there's kind of like this sea of humanity in these bags. And then the sea of humanity went into the tree stumps. I mean, the last tree, that's all stuffed with human hair. So it's containing all this DNA.
All right. Okay. Now, there is something I really must talk to you about. And it is, the frames around this particular work. I've said this to you before. There's another quality of the total presentation of the precision and the technical work that you put towards your pieces. Please explain the solidity of the metal frames for this work. And I'm constantly really amazed, Babs, at your, the depth of knowledge regarding your technical expertise in metal, in wood, all those things that I'm going to use the word tinker, but it's not really that. It's really that you are mastered in. And, maybe you could tell us how you acquired all of this technical skill, and you must really love doing it.
do. I like playing with different mediums. I mean, it's interesting to me. And what happened is that I wanted to use this rusted steel because, again, the rust was this activity of the demise of a material, you know, the decadence of the material. And I don't even, honestly, I don't even recall how I suddenly decided that I was going to frame these things in the rusted steel. And so I rust these things for quite a while, and then I wire brush them down, and then I seal them. And these particular pieces are in a shadow box which is created also with the shadow box ground that's in there is gesso and layers of modeling paste. That modeling paste surface, which is so beautiful, is the background that these paper rust and tea stained. That's what these objects are, rust and tea stained. I mean, these pieces of paper. And
is it also on the sides between the frame and the backing, the back?
Say that again. What?
Is it the same material that you use on the sides as it is in the back? You know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It's a little box that I want these pieces to feel like they're in. And then they're adhered down with matte medium. You know, that's how I
hope that artists are listening, because I know that artists are very, very interested, you know, in these subject matters. It's the way that we do stuff and all of that. Really the beauty of, you know, the finishing of the work and the way that you finish your work, and every detail is so painstakingly considered. I mean, I see, is it on the surface of, is it screws in there that's, you can see? It's also
yeah, the frames themselves are, there are screw bolts that go in the front.
Perfect.
That I wanted that industrial sort of look. Yes. To them.
It's industrial, yet it does not take away from the fragility of the work.
Yeah.
It protects it, and it doesn't take away from it.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting. You know, again, it's that idea that I like to pose opposing types of mediums to each other.
Okay. Now we're going to have to show two of my slides, if you indulge me, because we're coming up to the end of the time.
Yes.
So if we could call up White Falls, here it is. And here is the White Falls at the airport. And you can see very clearly that Bab's work is right next to mine. Okay. And this work is of my crocheted plastic, which I think most of the audience has seen in different configurations in galleries. This particular work was designed for this installation at the Tampa International Airport. And it hangs with Bab's double vessel. Now, we can look at the last slide. If Danny would
go to
slide.
28 there, you can see it.
So a version of this work will expand to 32 feet wide and be installed at the Baker Museum in Naples, Florida. And it's part of the invitational exhibition called Florida Contemporary. It will be titled White Falls, Artist Naples. And the exhibition at the Baker will run from November 2020 to March 2021. So that's it. We have run out.
Can we put in a little plug for the show at the Tampa Airport? Because that will run until February.
Absolutely.
February, end of February or something like that. And as I was saying, the easiest way, if you want to go see it, is to park in the garage, park by the red elevators, go down to the 3rd floor. The first hour is free. They just don't want big groups to come, but people
Right.
are definitely encouraged to go see it, and you can easily social distance, and that was the plug.
Great, great. Okay, now we have to hand it over, I believe, to Danny. Once again, he is going to do it some announcements. Danny, there you are.
Well, yes. Well, it was a great conversation. Before we move on to announcements, we're going to be returning in October with the 3rd episode of Friend of a Friend, and Babs will be our next host. So I'd love to hear who our next guest is going to be in October.
That's right, Babs.
Well, I am so, like I said, I'm so excited about this series. I just love it. I think it's a really great way to get to meet artists in the Pinellas County area, and having a conversation between your colleagues, your peers. It's a wonderful way of doing it. And I just want to thank you again, Creative Pinellas, for doing this. And yes, I invited Jason Hackenworth. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him and seeing what he has to say, because he has some fascinating work, and we have a bit of history, and I'll talk about that when he and I get together for the interview.
Okay. So.
All right. Well, that's very exciting. We're looking forward to watching that one. That's episode 3 with Babs Reingold and Jason Hackenworth coming up in September. It'll stream here where you're catching this one on facebook.com/Creative Pinellas. And then, we'll eventually see in October who Jason will choose as his guest. So we're looking forward to that.